Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. So I figured out a way to buy an ARCO, what is this thing called? Easy Rider for $1. $1. I met this guy at the flea market, and I kept looking at this bike, and we kept talking about the story about Alexander Reynolds and how they were in Hackensack and how I grew up near there in Emerson, New Jersey when I was a young kid, and how the company went out of business like in 1990, how this is a 1970 or 71. I moved out of New Jersey, I guess in 68, 69, something like that. So we kept talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And, you know, I didn't want to pay $125 for it. So we went round and round, and finally we hit upon this deal. He told me if I paid him $124 for this crowbar, he would give me the bike for $1. And I jumped all over that deal. Now, I ask you, did I get ripped off? So here it is in all its glory. Right, it is the model number 3600. And what's pretty cool is I printed out the sheet, and it looks like this one here on top. And there's the words. What's interesting on the bottom, if you read all this, they cost $125 new back in the day. Now, I'm not exactly sure when this flyer came out. They were beginning to put out a little better stuff or a little fancier stuff. So I'm going to assume this is probably later than 71 time frame. Now, where did this come from? I always love the backstories. He went to something known as a mini bike garage sale. A guy had a whole horde of these things, and he had Bonanzas, he had some Hondas, he had them all there. And he was basically selling off his partials, and this was a partial. The guy bought it like this, minus a chain guard. He actually has one. The guy's name is George. He's from Jersey way down there. Anyway, he has one, same exact thing in primo condition, but he needed the chain guard. So he bought this bike just to get the chain guard off of it. And as near as I could tell, he paid $100 or $125 for it. So he really wasn't letting it go for any less than that. The motor is not correct. It probably had a Tecumseh on it back in the day. It did come with a centrifugal clutch. You can kind of see it sticking off of there. If you look at the literature shows the bike without a fender. It shows that crossbar, but it shows it without a fender. What's also interesting is the later ones actually got a little fancier with this. And then the fender wrapped around and was bolted on top instead of bolted underneath like that. In this section here, I think I'm showing it to you right there, there was actually like a key switch. And on the key switch was the key ring had a little set of checkered flags, like if you win the race, and an AR or an ARCO symbol. Now, mini bikes are tough, right? This thing is, if you assume it's a 1970, that makes it what, 48 years old? Oh my God. Anyway, so this thing is almost a 50-year-old mini bike. The real pure people would, like, this is the original seat. They would keep this until the cows came home. You could see it used to be gold back in the day trim that kind of peeled off, but or silver rather, chrome. But the real pure mini bike people would do their best to find a period correct engine, hopefully a 70 or 71 Tecumseh to put on there. I'm not sure if this had the 2.5, 3 horse. They would probably go with the 3 horse just to be pretty universal. They would go crazy getting the key switch. This originally was red. They would get it back to being red. You know what I mean? They would do everything like that. When I put my hot little hands on a mini bike, I was normally the second, third, fourth, fifth owner, and the engine was long gone. I mean, we put any engine we could find on there. Back then, there were a lot of Tecumsehs floating around. They put them on almost everything. But if we found a Briggs, even if we found a wrap the rope around 2 horsepower Briggs, we put on whatever we could put on them. Clutch, we put on whatever would fit on the shaft. And you know, I mean, typically the throttle, that's a twist throttle. A lot of times we used to use brake handles off of bicycles. You know, we used to put those on there. So it's kind of hard on what you do with a mini bike. For me, my mini bikes used to always have scrub brakes. And that's really the part I'm having the most trouble with deciding on with this bike. And let me tell you why. I could paint it. I can put the wrong engine on it. I could do all those crazy things, and you could come backwards from that. No problem. Nothing's been altered, right? I haven't changed anything from a physical bike point of view. But if you put a scrub brake on this and you weld a little standoff here with a hole in it and the second one there, and you put a rod through with a brake on it such that when you step on it, it pushes a scrubber up against the tire. Now you've welded to the frame. You've changed the frame. And that's where things are less good. Some of you guys have mentioned that you could put a clutch brake on it, and I guess that's a way of staying away from welding onto the frame. A clutch brake is a band that literally goes around the outside of the clutch, and when you apply the brakes, it squeezes the band, which stops the outside of the clutch or slows the outside of the clutch, and the clutch drives the back wheel. Works beautifully unless you throw the chain. If you throw the chain, get the feet out and start Flintstone stopping. So there we are. I appreciate the comments, all the comments from the mini bike purists who say, you know, you got to go get all the parts and make it back to real, to the folks who would say, oh, I would cut it up and rat rod it. The thing is almost 50 years old, so I will not be cutting on this frame. If I'm going to cut on a frame, I will cut on a China bike frame, because the China bike is worth nothing from the factory and a little less when it's well worn. So there you go. Anyway, I would like your thoughts, and it is interesting. So I hope you guys get the irony of my $1 ARCO Alexander Reynolds mini bike. By the way, I did try to look up the company, and I couldn't find anything, but you know, kind of when you're at a flea market buying a mini bike, everybody kind of shares, and oh, I used to live in New Jersey, oh, I used to live in Hackensack, oh, I knew a guy that worked for Alexander Reynolds. And it turns out Alexander Reynolds made hand trucks, you know, those things that you stand upright with the little platform on the bottom, and you bend them over to carry a stack of crates. That's what they did, but they also did a bunch of custom work for others, bending pipe for making various things, whether it was shelving or custom units. They were basically a pipe bending manufacturing type place that also did welding. At some point, somebody had the bright idea of, hey, you know, we can smash together a mini bike because we could do all these bends. When it comes to actually bending this into making this mini bike, it's actually pretty easy because you really don't have anything complex here, right? You got a bend here, a bend there. And the frame is basically flat except where they move it in a little bit here to do this, which makes it tight on top. So if I had to guess, they bent this was one flat piece, the other thing was one flat piece, then you got something for the pegs, then they probably jigged it to pull it together, right? They probably had a jig, perhaps with a spacer there clamping it, so you know it looks a little flattened here, so they might have had a jig that pulled that together, and then they just started welding, whether you're welding these on these, the cross, you know, and everything else. So it is actually pretty easy to build. It would literally take seconds to bend the two frame halves, and then and doing it the way I described, the two frame halves would match, and then you would just jig it and weld it, and everything's perfect, right? You just perhaps have a block back here that you press it against, and up there squeeze it a little, and you're together. The front forks are a piece of cake, right? Smashy on the end of the pipe, and just, you know, a bend on top. I don't even think they got a slight bend here, slight radius there, but I mean fairly easy. The original color. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to thank you all for watching. Happy New Year's Eve. Behave yourselves tonight. Nobody needs any trouble. Remember, feet down, heads up, get out there and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.